Hey guys, welcome to this new video. Today we're gonna talk about manufacturing quality products in Vietnam and especially furniture, home interior design, indoor and outdoor products. And to talk about this subject, I invited Carl to digest this for you. So Carl has experience from sourcing to designing to manufacturing products. You had your own factory in Vietnam. So I think you are the best person to share about this big picture. So thank you, Carl, for accepting this interview. Can you start by introducing yourself and your journey? I know you live in Laos, China, and you finally ended up being in Vietnam for quite a while. So can you start by introducing yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name is Carl Ronhave. I am educated as a cabinet maker and an engineer from Denmark. Grew up on a furniture factory, so it was kind of in my blood that I had to do furniture in the long run. So after I finished my education, I got a job in Laos as a production manager for a Danish-owned company in Laos, manufacturing outdoor furniture. I was running that factory for a year, and then I got headhunted by another Danish company in Vietnam. So in 2000, I went to Vietnam, started working for a Danish company called Scancom, also manufacturing outdoor furniture, in charge of their CM operation, contract manufacturers. I was there for 4.5 years, and at the end of that period, I got offered a furniture factory in Sweden that went bankrupt. So I was offered to buy this one, and it was an opportunity that I was longing after to try. So I bought the factory, packed it down, shipped it to Da Nang in Vietnam, where I was trying to buy a state-owned company that was closed down at that time. I didn't succeed on that, but I put a lot of effort into trying to buy that one because I helped them set up this factory for the manufacturing of outdoor furniture for Scancom. And I knew the factory flow. It was all orchestrated by me, and the workforce was trained quality-wise by me. So the benefit of taking over an existing factory was huge for me. So that was why I ended up in Da Nang in the first place. The deal didn't go through with this state-owned company, so I started Ronhave Furniture in a rented factory in Da Nang. We grew very fast at that period of time, so we moved factory 3 times. So I'm very skilled at moving factory and still keeping a production running at the same time. And in 2006, I bought a huge amount of machinery from another Danish factory that went bankrupt and shipped it to, some of it to Da Nang, but the more advanced machines I shipped to Binh Hoa City, where I could find CNC operating manufacturers. So I started there with the more advanced machinery production. So at that time I had 2 factories. So we were running there until 2010, where I got offered to, there was a company that wanted to buy my 2 factories, and I was we will get back to that, the challenges later on with manufacturing in Vietnam and what benefits there is and challenges. So we get back to that. But in 2010 I sold the factories, and I moved to China. I got a job as general manager for a Danish company, Intersteel. I was sitting there for 5 years in this position, and after that moved back to Vietnam, where we started Scandinavian House, which is the company I'm running today.
Thank you, Carl, about this big story of your life, in Asia, being in 3 different countries. We're gonna come back a little bit after about the challenges that you had and that you mentioned about running big factory in Vietnam, and I guess it was a huge defining moment in your life. That's why you finally ended up doing your own design and having a company that you can handle it better, I would say, maybe with a more controllable staff and really a field that you know well, and you kind of go deep into that direction, either that being too wild and having maybe so much hassle running this factory. So coming back to the point of now, what you are doing nowadays, designing and providing supply for Scandinavia and for US. Can you share about your current journey?
We are mainly designing new ranges, new designs, mid-high-end ranges that we then present to customers, and then we sell it in. A lot of time we sell the whole package, so they like our design, they buy it, we then deliver the product after time spent as well. So they get the full package in one place. Mm-hmm. The advantages of what we have now compared with what we had when we were own manufacturing, when we had our own factory, is that now we are very skilled at combining different materials. So before we were kind of locked into hardwoods and veneer, because that was the machine lines. We had big streets with machines specialized in this, but we didn't do the steel, we didn't do the linoleum, we didn't do all the plastic, we didn't do all the rest of the combined products. So now we can offer the full package where it's limited what we can actually do, and that's fun. Especially for a wood guy like me, working with stainless steel, different materials. It's nice and be able to combine that with the knowledge of making wood sustainable, where the construction are made correct, different wood can move and things. It's very nice. So we are now able to do much more than what we did before.
Actually, Carl, I got some guys approaching me recently because I made a video maybe a year ago with a friend of mine about manufacturing. And some guys were approaching me saying that, they are doing Amazon FBA, so they're already working with some manufacturers in China, and I wanted to come to Vietnam, open a factory. So there is a lot of myth and misconception from foreigner if you want to jump into that market and owning your own factory. Can you come back to the challenging moment that you have when you have a successful factory running and you wanted to open the second factory, and at that time it was quite hard to handle? Can you come back to this exact moment and what happened?
Yes, there is a lot of hidden challenges in manufacturing, and I guess there's different challenges in different countries. And here, one of the biggest challenges I was facing at that time was for our Dong Nai factory in Bien Hoa City was labor, HR related problems. The factory was based in a community of thousands of different smaller, medium-sized, bigger wood manufacturers, and there was such a big competition about the staff out there. So staff rotation was big. We kept getting new staff in, train them up. They have a problem, they go next door. They get a job 2 hours later, they have a new job. So it was very, very difficult to make a sustainable quality improvement constantly, because if your middle level or management staff are leaving the factory, you have to be on the factory floor and you got to basically run it, and that means that you are not focusing on your sales and your growth of the factory. So we had in the factory in the south, we had huge problem with staff. HR related issues was time consuming. Very big time consuming.
I guess, yeah, many staff are like coming and, for instance, during TED, right, they are going back to their hometown and they don't show up after those kind of challenges. This is maybe a disadvantage and a cons of owning your own factory. But there is still a lot of opportunities. If you already skill and experience into this industry, maybe you are currently manufacturing and working with factories in China and you see the opportunity of factories in Vietnam. Can you give some pros and cons of owning your factory in Vietnam nowadays?
Yes, if you start with the pros, then first of all, you have your designs completely safe. it's in-house. You control all your R&D secrets or development things. So that's a good advantage to have. You control your own quality level, and that in itself is worth considering, because you know what you can continuously improve on your quality all the way through. Time-wise, delivery times are easier to control in your own factory, because you can fine-tune a manufacturing unit constantly by cutting 1 second there, 30 seconds there, by moving your machinery around. So you can do an overall better project on that one. What there is of challenges with having your own factory is the HR, like we mentioned before. HR departments are very big in Vietnam. In Europe, you might see 3 or 4 people in an HR department. It's not uncommon to see 30, 40 people in an HR department for a factory that have 1,000 people here. Mm-hmm. So HR, and that's just a sign of how many resources that goes into this HR side of it. So if people are looking at investing, go around, visit potential suppliers, find out how are they actually set up, how many people are there in the HR department, and they get an idea about the workloads that are there, because that's also related to turnovers of staff and constantly finding new staff, schemes to get them in, train them up and things. It is time consuming, this side of the part.
So you have to be aware about the HR resources to be able to replace the staff that are leaving. The advantage, you say that you have a full control from A to Z into the manufacturing process. Yeah. You find maybe a good mix, right? It's like your unit selling proposition for your customers is that you are having some staff that are inside the factory, right? And yes, you are taking care of the design. Why did you choose that angle to be able to control the time better and to have really some key people over there to really ensure the quality and the shipments of the big container?
Yeah, good question. Well, now our setup is built on, we have staff sitting in the factory checking their raw material flow. So we make sure that things comes in on time. The Vietnamese manufacturing skills has improved dramatically the last few years. So factories are good. They're very, very skilled. But where we sometimes find lack of skills are in the planning process. Make sure that our raw material, and we use sometimes raw materials that are specially bought for our product. So we need to make sure that there's enough of it. We need to make sure that it's available when the production starts for this. And we also relate that to our QC department that then go in and check stepwise through the manufacturing unit. So if you're making solid wood product, we actually check that the moisture of the wood that goes into the factory is correct. So we're not ending up 4 weeks later with rejecting it because there's too high moisture contents in the product, or the quality of the wood wasn't to spec. So we check every step in the production line, which has been very efficient for us to make sure that we actually deliver on time when we're doing this way.
Yeah, because you told me you are importing your raw material mostly from Canada and the US, right?
Yes.
So I guess you have to be sure every time you iterate on the product, every time you change something a little bit, that you will be on time in the end of the production, process, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. If we production is fun, right? But it's not always going as planned, and that means that you have setbacks. Tooling are missing, or not coming in on time, or special hardware is not coming on time. But because we know it so early in the stage, we can actually manage to gain up for it later on. So we can re-change the production flow and then gain that time that is wasted and still deliver on time. But if you only came as a third party and checked at the end of the production line, we will have delays nearly every single time, because we will not be able to to take action
Anticipate.
so early in the process.
Yeah, we understand now your unique selling proposition of having some guys there. So you ensure the whole process, and you can control the design, the manufacturing parts, and to be sure when the product is shipped, this is the product that your end customer is waiting for, right?
Yes.
Can we come back? Let's say now you are talking to someone who was manufacturing in China. Maybe they are already having a business overseas, they were working with China, and then finally they are considering the opportunity of relocating and moving the factory to Vietnam. What advice you would provide them so they can get started in Vietnam?
Make sure that you don't have all your eggs in one basket. If they have a manufacturing, do it at the same time. So they slowly scale down their manufacturing in China and then start in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. The Vietnamese work environment are slightly different. I spent a lot of time, 5 years in China. We did 6,000 containers every year out of China. So I know the manufacturing units in China, and they are slightly different in the sense that the workforce are very focused on doing one thing, and they do it really, really good. Vietnam is very creative. You can get one worker to do many different things easily here, but being systematic, missing a little bit in the Vietnamese thing. So it takes a little bit longer time in Vietnam to set up your manufacturing unit to the output that you actually want.
Okay.
And a lot of time it requires more people. So the output per person is a bit less here in Vietnam than it is in China. And that has something to do with the Chinese production lifespan have been going on for so many years, so they are quite skilled at what they do, where Vietnam is still in the earlier stage, a little behind Chinese skills. Another factor that people have to remember is that setting up machinery and things, you need more higher qualified people here, so you need more technicians to do this. Where Europe, for instance, if you compare with Europe, you can ask a worker to set up your machinery, and the skills levels are a bit higher, and people kind of forget that. They focus on the salary level and not the skills level at the worker that are actually operating the machinery. For Europe, a worker can set up their own machinery quite easily. Here you will have to get a technician to set up your machinery. So that means that part, you have to calculate that in, or remember that.
So talking about this fact that Vietnam is still a little bit backward compared to China, and from your understanding of this market and being involved in the manufacturing industry, what's the expectation we should have in the next 5 to 10 years in Vietnam?
Vietnam, I followed Vietnam for the last 20 years, manufacturing-wise, and the progress has been incredible. How fast the Vietnamese production units have actually developed, it's amazing. So I think if you're looking 10 years in front, Vietnam is up on the level where China is at that time, right? So we're gaining in quite easily on this level. The good advantage is that salary levels are lower in Vietnam, so you can afford to hire more people, but that also means that you have more HR related work.
Yeah, we always come back to this HR like big problem that for you was your defining moment.
Yeah, if we focus a little bit on that, in Da Nang I had no problem. I had the same workers for 5 years. My biggest competitors in Da Nang was actually the garment industry that suddenly came in and set up massive factories and suddenly draw 1,000 workers into a factory in no time, because the setup was fast for garment factories. That was my biggest competitor in Da Nang, actually, for workforce. But I had the same workers for the whole time in Da Nang, and that made it easy. You could train your workers. You can keep improving on the workforce. In the south, it was different. It was constantly management came in groups. So that means that you hire a factory manager. He came with the 5 department managers. You have a problem with the factory manager, the whole middle level backbone of your factory goes, right? And then you got to start all over again. And that is frustrating, because that time you should use on developing your business and gaining sales.
Yeah, sure. So now finally you find a little bit your dream company, right? You are still providing design and supply for we say Scandinavia and the US. I had also one question when we first met. It was, how do you deal with the copycat? Chinese are very famous to copy, and even some Vietnamese designing company could copy, right? Because you have a team of 5 people working hard. You show me some of your samples in your showroom here. How do you deal with that?
It's a good question, because it's not easy to control. You can patent your product, but we are doing so many different designs that it is tricky to patent it all, and you have to patent it for different markets as well. So we are getting copied, but we are trying to follow up on it as well, and let the end customer know that this is our design, and they react quite positive to when we approach them and say, okay, we saw we take it off the market. So that kind of works okay, but completely avoiding getting copied, it's difficult, and it is a sign of we're doing something right. So if people want to copy us, we must be doing it correct.
Thank you, Carl, for this interview and taking time to share about your entrepreneurship journey, the up and down of being involved in the manufacturing sectors, the furniture industry, indoor and outdoor products. If you guys want to learn more about a Scandinavian house, as well as the interior design, supplying design for Scandinavian companies and exporting in Europe and in the US. You can check in the description. I will leave a link, some resources, and so you can learn more about Carl company as well as the furniture sectors in Vietnam. Thanks, Carl, again for this interview.
You're very welcome. And we are always happy to share. If you can share some knowledge, we paid for it, so we like to share it.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Carl. I see you in the next video.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, that's good.
And I'ma get it right, get on sight like